Hello, ActiveSage here on the Sage channel, and today, as always on a Thursday, an update came out for Space Engineers. Well, today's update is one of the most fantastic things they've released in a long time. It's sculpting, basically. If you've ever heard of the 3D sculpting program ZBrush, and there was a new feature added a little while ago called Dynamesh, in fact a year or two ago now, I believe, where it basically automatically adds polys. Well, this actually looks a lot like that. What it does is it adds voxels. So, first thing you need to know is you press G, and if you're in creative mode, down here there is a Voxel Hands thing, and they add a bunch of tools for that. Go ahead and select them, and you get a little box like this. If you're not near an asteroid, you're not going to get a box or anything. You need to know you need to be near an asteroid. When you go close in near an asteroid, if you have one of those tools selected, you can get this big green bounding box around the asteroid. You can only sculpt within those boxes. If you were to say sculpt all the way and try to sculpt out of it, you'll actually hit the edge and it just stops. You cannot sculpt when you're outside of them. I'm clicking right now with left mouse button. It's not adding anything more. And by the way, that's the simplest way to sculpt, is just left click. Right click, just as per usual, removes, and you see the way it just transforms and melts away. Very simple and straightforward, and it's incredibly useful. Right now I am sculpting while in spectator mode. Remember, you get to that by pressing F8. F6 takes you back to your body. F9 allows you to control your body while you're in spectator mode. Just the basics, but I find it easy to sculpt when you're in spectator mode, especially because then you can use your mouse wheel to slow down your speed. So if you want to do more precise stuff like this, you can do so. And of course you can speed up your speed as well if you want to go ahead and be removing a large bulk of stuff quickly or adding it in. Very cool. Now, enough of spectator mode nonsense. That's just my way of using it. The tools that you see at the bottom are pretty simple and straightforward. You have this sort of pill-shaped thing, the square we were just looking at, a ramp. By the way, you can rotate almost all of these with the normal rotation buttons that you use for normal blocks. It is a bit strange where if I'm pressing the rotate around that button and then I press the up and down one, the end button, it doesn't rotate based on your screen. It sort of seems to rotate based on just the object. It's a bit odd. So I end up often just using the spheres and stuff like that that don't rotate. The sphere and the cube don't rotate. And then of course they also, if I was to do a shift 2, they have this last tool here, the terrain leveling tool, which allows you to click and it just makes a level thing. You can see I'm moving the mouse upwards, it stays down there on a level plane. If I release and start clicking again up here, it'll start making a new plane up there. So you could sort of make mountainous plateaus, a flat area with this, all sorts of stuff. Should be noted also there are settings for all of these tools. So if I press H, as long as you have one of these tools selected, let's see if I press H on without one, it doesn't pop up, but if you press H with one of these tools, comes up these settings for that specific tool, and you can adjust its radius. The sphere seems to be a bit finicky, as you can see here. I've changed its radius, but there we go. It seems like it updated once we moved, so it's now a lot smaller than it was when we were over there. You can see I have to get right up to this before you can start carving into it. It's a bit hard to tell sometimes, as you obviously don't have depth in this game yet. Press H again. You can do project to voxel, so we're basically moving from the top to bottom. So we have show bounding box, which is just that huge green bounding box that tells you where you can sculpt when you're around an asteroid. Project to voxel basically means wherever you're aiming, if there is a voxel, an asteroid to snap to, it'll snap right to it. And so you can see I'm basically drawing on the sides of this thing now. So I can add in material like that. Pretty cool. Sort of a sculpting thing. Sort of like what I was talking about with ZBrush. The fact that I can do this now, and if we go to the side, you can see now I've built it up. Pretty cool. So this is basically how ZBrush works, is you can paint and sculpt like this. It's pretty damn awesome. But I find it a bit annoying here because the voxel, if you see there, it's jumping bit by bit. It seems a bit jumpity. It's absolutely fine, but I prefer going in there right now at least and just doing this a different way, which is leaving it free. So again, we're going to do H. I'm going to turn off project to voxel. The way I like to sculpt is more like this, where I'll sculpt in, and often what I'll do is I'll actually just use my mouse, my actual move keys, to move closer and farther away to get the shapes I like. I don't know, in time I'm sure I'll figure out which one I really like the absolute most. But as you probably saw in the beginning of the video, I had that huge sage station over here, which is sort of grabbed by a mountain, and I did this mainly using the way I just showed. What else do we have in those H options? If we go back to that, we can press it again. We have transparency, so let's go ahead and actually get our cube in here because we're outside of the bounding box. And you can see that we can change transparency, so if you take it all the way down, it's actually completely solid, and then all the way up, you can see through it pretty dang well. It's pretty cool. I've actually found it a bit confusing if you have the transparency all the way down, because if you look at this, it's sort of, you're seeing through the cube, it's like backface calling. Yeah, it's a bit confusing with these, so I always end up leaving it transparency like this, which is also helpful when you're carving, because then once you actually go through an object, you can see when it's actually clipping through it, so you can see how much you're going to be cutting away or adding in like this. It's pretty cool. Another thing to note is at the bottom there, you can see that material Cobalt 01. Well, using the bracket keys on your keyboard, just like you do for paints, you can switch between all the different materials. Unfortunately, there is no Shift P, or when you press P, it just brings up the color picker. It would be nice if maybe Shift P would bring up a selector for specific materials, so you wouldn't have to tab through them all manually. But you can go ahead and select different materials to be adding in. Should also be noted that if you say build all this, and like I did here, and then you realize that holy crap, that's not cool. I really wish that this all was made out of a different material. Oh, well, it's pretty simple to change all that, because you can go ahead and select the material. Let's go with material 3 while aiming at it and do middle mouse button, and it'll change it. So right away you can see I've changed this whole mountain area here into a different type of stone. Also, when building out, I highly suggest that you build in a similar fashion to what I did here, which is basically go ahead. It's the basic thing for sculpting techniques is you want to get the basic shape in. So let's say we wanted to add like a mountainous area on top of this here. Well, right away I'm going to go ahead and buzz about and add in, yeah, a mountainous area right around here. Come on, keep going. Get the basic shape of it in. You want to fill it in too, because you don't want to have empty gaps in there unless you're planning on letting people fly in there and have just large open spaces. So I'm going to go ahead very quickly, fill this whole thing in, get the basic shape of it in. And let's go ahead. We want the top of the mountain right there. Let's go back down now, quickly around here. I have my mouse speed when spectator set to a medium speed, because of course if we're moving too quick, it gets harder to control where we're actually placing stuff. So there we go, get all that in. Let's go back up here to the mountain, bring down these edges here. Very nice. Very nice. You don't want to be taking too much time on the early stages, obviously, because you just want to get the basic shape of it in. And I'm even doing a little bit extra than I should be doing here, where I'm going in and trying to fill in some of the edges and corners here. Because what you want to do is get the basic shape in and then go back and fill in the rest later. And by the way, as you can see in spectator mode, you can of course fly through objects, which makes it really easy to fly into places like this and find any holes you failed to fill in when you originally did it. So don't worry too much about getting the holes the first go. There we go. That's that. So now I have the basic shape of the top of this little mountainous area here. It's a bit strange. I got a bit of an outcropping here that I don't want, so I'll go ahead and fill that in real quick. There we go. Got that filled in pretty well. And now we can go ahead and actually start worrying about details on this. And I often like doing details with this little tiny block here. It's how I got all these little tiny bits carved in here and how I got them pushed right up against it. Because with this, you can very easily go, okay, let's go ahead and just start adding in right here and get our shapes in. And of course, like all the other ones, we can go ahead and press H and change its size up. So if we want to have a bigger block, we can. And then because it is square and because you can't rotate, you end up with some more jagged edges, which seem pretty odd. Now at this size, it sort of shows up, the fact that it is just a square like at corners like this. But on its smaller sizes, it really gets disguised pretty well. And remember, you can always remove stuff. So if you want to do an additive and then removal method, you can add in a large bunch of stuff and then cut away back into it to sort of add more detail into what you had just made, so it's not just a flat surface. So you see there, it's a sort of coming together. It takes a long time to get these the way you want. And also, of course, helps if you have a really good, there we go, idea of what you want to do first. And let's go ahead and drop the distance, because I like working pretty close with this one. There we go. So you can see you can just build in the stuff. You can, of course, if you wanted to have these crazy little bits coming up like this, probably don't want to do that. It doesn't look very realistic and looks pretty strange. But remember, you can always go ahead and remove stuff if you decide you don't like it. So yeah, that's basically how I did that whole area over here. Is I did the big stuff, then I went back and added smaller details and smaller details. And some of it, like over here, I actually went ahead in, and you can see I didn't finish this side off too well. This is mainly just the show side, because the mountain, or the asteroid, originally sort of stopped right here, and this wasn't even there. I added all this out. But a lot of what I did was also I took this, the big sphere, and then I just gently carved away at it. In fact, for this, I dropped the scale back down, so the scale still seems big. It's weird because you expect it actually to look like it was getting smaller. It doesn't. But you can see I could carve away just little tiny bits at a time to sort of get interesting shapes as well. Lots of different ways to go about this, but remember, you probably want to make sure you get in your large overall shape first before you go back in and start editing it. And like I said, I usually like just flying about instead of snapping it to the grid of the actual voxels. That way I can do more stuff like this where I'm gently chipping away little bits at a time. It seems to work better that way for me, at least. I don't know. It probably depends on what you're doing. A few more things that should be noted is that you can actually, at the very top, snap to voxel grid, which means in 3D space, just as it was when we were aiming to the actual voxels themselves. It snaps to this very 3D space here, so you can bounce about and just have very precise stuff. Works pretty well with these if you want to go ahead and do some things like this. You can then be creating very, very static stuff if you wanted to. Of course, what I'm doing right now, I'm just making a flat platform. Little glitch up there. That's what this thing is actually for, this big cube, the leveling tool. Its icon's right there at the bottom, number 5 key. And the best way to show that is it's actually just a pretty simple thing that you can choose axes on. And, oh dear, it still seems to be a square. Usually it's not a square. There we go. So you can see you can, there we go, tweak the two axes, and then it'll make a flat plane. So instead of just those plateau things I was doing, you can actually just make a flat plane. That way you'll have a perfect area to build on, and then go back and actually add mountains around it, or caves, or whatever you like for your space base or whatnot. Pretty damn cool stuff. Something else that should be noted, as I already showed with this, when it comes out to the far side, it ends up just stopping, as you can see right there. Well, be warned, if you have put two asteroids next to each other, you can end up with some terrifying stuff like this. As you can see, as I fly next to this one, we get its green bounding box. But the thing is, its green bounding box stops right over here at this corner at the top left. You can your screen, you can see it there. But if I move a little bit more to the left, we end up with the bounding box of the other asteroid. So if I start building from here, I should be able to build all the way out to here without issue. And I should be able to build all the way back down into here without issue. Well, the thing is, because those two asteroids have their own bounding boxes colliding with one another, you end up with some funky stuff where this, as you can see right here, doesn't reconnect properly, and this right here actually separated and you started building in the other asteroids area. It should also be noted that even if you go ahead and put a little blob out here and decide, I don't want that there, and instead of just right-clicking to remove it, you decide you want to do a Control-X on it, it will delete the entire asteroid, as I've just demonstrated. So be warned about that. Also, okay, there we go, a little graphical glitch, nothing to worry about. So remember, anything you've built inside that bounding box still counts as that same asteroid, so don't just go deleting willy-nilly. Should also be noted that when I built out this mountain, you were probably thinking, well, what about resources that would be inside of said mountain? Shouldn't you be adding those as you go? Don't need to. That middle mouse button I showed you with the material at the bottom right, you can set it to whatever, fly in here, and I can go ahead and left-click and put a bunch of nickel in here. Even though it's not showing up, it's actually there, and we can demonstrate that now by actually going ahead and removing some of the ground here, and you'll actually see, if we can find where I put it, there will be nickel inside this mountain. Alright, obviously that wasn't right. It wasn't left click, as I said, it was middle mouse button, so I'm in here, clearly nothing in here. Hold middle mouse button, I'm dragging it around, and then when I actually carve through it, this time we will be seeing the gold in there, because oh god, yes, I was trying to press the wrong button there to make it larger. Really wish I had the ability to, not distance, god, up the radius without actually having to go into that screen, like maybe hold control and scroll wheel, and that would make it get bigger or something, or shift and scroll wheel might change its distance from you. Okay, really wrong about this gold, I guess, being able to put it inside there. Middle mouse button should be adding it in, but it doesn't look like it's wanting to work. So if I middle mouse button all along here, theoretically, upon cutting through this thing, we should be finding tons and tons of gold. There it is. Worked that time. Yes, big seam of it. Yes, that looks like it's working. Why isn't it working here? I don't quite know. So middle mouse button, click right in here. Huge section right down there. And cut through it. There we go. It's showing up that time. Weird, I don't get it. It seems like it might have to be slightly sticking out for it to take effect. It's very, very confusing to me right now. It's possible that it needs to be partially affecting the outside for it to actually change the material type, but I'm pretty sure I did this earlier and it didn't need to be. Let's really quickly, just to double, quadruple check, we're going to set the radius down to 5-ish. Let's fly out the side, see how big that is, yeah. And let's push it in, so it should be in there just a bit. Middle mouse button, a bit. Shouldn't be sticking out anywhere else, and let's just slowly start cutting our way through here. Yep, there it is. So it does work, just middle mouse button, not left mouse button as I originally said. Silly bugger. Anyway, back to the original bit I recorded, because I had to add this in afterwards, because I was an imbecile. Well, you can really tell what I did differently here just because of the different texture I have, if I go back and switch back to, I think it was it this stone was the original stone of this mountain? Yeah. If I go back to this and then set ourselves back to that huge radius there that we had originally, I can fill it back in and it doesn't look like it's something I added after so much. There we go. Remember, you can add lots of little details painting that stuff in. Other updates they've done oh, another thing I nearly forgot. You see these ships over here? Their main purpose is that I can demonstrate that you cannot paint over a ship or player. So you can see it's got its red bounding box around it. So if I was to try to grow this up here, it just refuses to build around it. In fact, it just sort of stops building at all. You can't make a perfect cube or something around it. It just stops building once you mouse into it slightly. Yeah, it just stops building. So you can't build over large ships, small ships, or players. What else do we have? Well, they did do an update today for that ship that I just put in there, where you can now set off weapons, different types of weapons, missile launchers and Gatling guns, with sensors, timer blocks, and button control panels. So now, all those automated ships I've made in the past, well, now they can actually work and shoot at stuff instead of just having to be suicide ships. Or these, they don't actually chase you around even though they got thrusters on them, but they will target and fire. So if I fly into here, once I get into the 50-meter range of all these bastards, they will all start aiming at me and firing. Still unfortunate that the target radius for these guys is only 50 meters when it comes to sensors, but still pretty damn interesting nonetheless. Anyway guys, I think that's everything for this update. It's pretty damn cool. I expect there's going to be a lot of people posting worlds online now, and I actually have a sneaking suspicion we might be seeing people posting their asteroids online, because I suspect the devs might be adding that feature in the future. That way our endless worlds can be populated not only by ships that people have built, but by actual... I love the way these things drift a little bit, they're so strange. But by actual asteroids built by people as well. Anyway guys, thanks a bunch for watching, hope you enjoy. Go ahead and download this update right away on Steam and start sculpting. It's a lot of fun. Oh, and remember, just in case you've forgotten, Shift F10 to add an asteroid in. So Shift F10 brings up this menu, you click, it shows up, and you put it in, and depending on which asteroid you spawn will depend on how much space around it you can build. So this was a pretty simple one. You can see it doesn't have much room around it, but if you go ahead and find the, what is it? Central Asteroid, and spawn that one in. That's that big huge one that we even have in the survival world. It's the one that I spawned in over there I've been working on. I think this is it. Oh, must be a bit of wreckage or something there. But yeah, I can place that in, and you can see it's a huge son of a gun with lots of space around it. So you'll have more than enough room to be building out for quite a while. I think it was the central one. It seems a bit small still. Nope, this definitely is it, flying inside it. Yeah, it's huge, actually. It's very big. Anyway, guys, so that's it. Thanks so much for watching. Remember, when you're building your mining tunnels and stuff with this, get your player in there every now and again to check that you're not making tunnels that are too tight, or else, well, you might find yourself in spot of bother. And remember, don't worry about building over your stations and stuff like that, because you can always go in and right-click to remove and clear them out, as I've done over here in the Sage Station, which, of course, I had originally blobbed over the whole thing. But if we were to go inside, it's actually pretty much all cleared out except for the reactor rooms way down at the bottom. Yeah. And I lowered my render detail, that's why some of this looks a bit weird, because I was testing something earlier. That's it, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this, and I shall talk to you guys. Ooh, see, I can fix that in like 2 seconds. If I hadn't derped up in the first place, that wouldn't be there. If I just go on the spectator, dear God, this is terribly embarrassing now. Just go ahead and do that. And in fact, if you don't want the snap, just like this, just like that. There we go. Fixed. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. Clean and clear.